When my colleague Richard died, people at the funeral talked about his kindness, about how he always had time to listen, about how you felt better just being in the same room with him. Nobody mentioned his title. Nobody mentioned his salary. I stood there thinking one thing. If they buried me tomorrow, what would people say about me? And I realized I didn't like the answer. My name is Donald. I'm 77 years old. I spent 42 years at the same company, worked my way up to executive vice president. I had a reputation I'd built over decades. People greeted me first in the hallway. Junior staff triple-checked their work before sending it to me. I thought that was life. I thought that was the reason to get up in the morning. I was wrong, and I want to tell you exactly how. Not so you will feel sorry for me, but so you do not find yourself standing at someone's graveside one day asking yourself the same question I asked. Because by that point, it might be too late to change the answer. I grew up in Cincinnati. My father was an accountant. My mother taught elementary school, a decent, quiet family. The main value in our house could be summed up in one word: successful. Not happy, not present, not loving. Successful. Make something of yourself. That is what I heard from childhood, like a hymn. Study hard, be successful. Work honestly, be successful. Do not let people down. Be successful. I became very successful. Successful for the company. Successful for the shareholders. Successful for the quarterly numbers, for the board presentations, for the annual reports. And somewhere inside all that success, I lost one small question I never quite got around to asking myself. What do I actually need? When I was 32, I got my first real promotion, Director of Operations. I remember that day. Came home, told my wife, Margaret. She hugged me. We had a glass of whiskey. I went to bed at midnight and could not sleep, not from excitement, from the list of things already spinning in my head. What needed fixing? Who needed moving? Which processes were broken? I lay there next to my sleeping wife and thought about work. I was 32 years old. There was a warm, living woman who loved me right beside me. And I was thinking about operational efficiency. That became normal for the next 30 years. Margaret never complained. She was the kind of woman who holds everything together quietly. She raised our kids while I built my career, took them to the beach while I stayed behind for conference calls, went to school events alone. One evening, in the fall of '99, our daughter Sarah had a part in the Thanksgiving play at school. She had been practicing her lines for 2 weeks. Margaret reminded me the week before, 3 days before that same morning. I showed up at the very end when the kids were already getting their coats on. Sarah saw me in the doorway. She looked at me and turned away. She was 9 years old. She did not make a scene. She just turned away. I remember that face to this day. Not hurt, not angry, just tired. A 9-year-old child with a tired face. I told myself once this project wraps up, I will breathe. The project wrapped up. The next one started. That is how 30 years passed. You know what is most frightening about making a career? Your entire reason for being. It is not that you lose time. Time is abstract. You do not miss it while you have it. Here is what is frightening. You start measuring yourself with only one ruler: title, income, status, influence. And gradually, Everything else stops feeling real. A conversation with your wife over dinner, not real. A walk with the kids, not real. A morning without an alarm, not real. Real is when you got promoted, when the deal closed, when everyone in the room is looking at you. You become a person who only feels alive in moments of recognition. And between those moments, you are just waiting for the next one. If you are watching this right now and thinking, so what work is normal? Everyone works. Hold on. One question. If someone handed you right now what you are chasing, the title, the money, the recognition, right now, this minute, would you feel happy? Or would you want the next level within a week? If the answer is the second one, you are already on the same road I was on. You just have not reached the end yet. Subscribe and hit like not for me. For the person in your life who is working 14-hour days right now and calling it ambition. This story might be the thing they hear in time. One like, and the algorithm puts it in front of them. Richard died at 68, a stroke fast. 3 weeks before the retirement he had been postponing for 9 years. He always said, once I retire, then I will really live. Drive up the coast, learn to cook, spend more time with the grandkids. He did not retire. He left life straight from the office. At the funeral, his wife Carol said one thing to me. She said, Don, he never figured out what he loved besides work. I stood there nodding and thinking that someone could say exactly the same thing about me. I drove home from that funeral, and for the first time in years, I was not thinking about work. I was thinking about what people would say about me, specifically. In what words? I ran through the faces of people who would come, and the words they would say, and I understood that most of the words would be about titles, results, professional accomplishments. About me as a person, about Donald, and not the executive vice president. There was almost nothing to say, because that Donald had barely existed. He had stayed behind somewhere in childhood in Cincinnati before he started earning his right to take up space. I got home. Margaret was making dinner. I walked up behind her and held her right there at the stove. She turned around, surprised. I did not say anything, just stood there holding her. She understood something on her own and did not ask. That was the first time in a very long time I was actually home, not just my body, me. The next day, I took a day off for no reason. Not sick, no travel. I just did not go in. Called my assistant, said I would not be there. I spent the whole day at home read, went to the grocery store, helped Margaret clean out the garage. We found a box in the back with my old drafting tools from college, a full-set wooden case, everything still there. I held them in my hands and remembered how in my 20s I could sit over a drawing until 3 in the morning and not notice the time passing. Margaret asked, "You want to keep those?" I said yes. That was a small moment, but it was the beginning. I am not going to tell you everything got easy after that. It did not. The habit of measuring myself by work did not disappear overnight. I kept catching myself thinking about Monday on weekends, planning tomorrow agenda during dinner, feeling something uncomfortably close to envy at someone else's success, even though I had long since achieved everything I had aimed for. But I started noticing it, and that was already different. I started coming home earlier, not by much, maybe an hour, but I spent that hour with Margaret at the kitchen table, no phone, At first, it felt awkward. We had both forgotten how to just sit together without a reason. Then we got used to it. Then we started looking forward to it. Sarah, my daughter, the one who turned away from me in the doorway when she was 9, said something to me a few years ago. She said, "Dad, you have changed." I asked, "How?" She said, "You actually hear what people say to you now. Before you would look at us, but you were somewhere else. We could tell." Kids always can tell. Remember that. I am 77 years old. Richard has been gone 8 years. Margaret is still here. Thank God we have been together 51 years. Sarah brings the grandkids over every couple of weeks. I pulled those drafting tools out of the garage, and sometimes I draw just for the sake of it. Nothing useful, nothing for anyone. It is pointless, and it is wonderful at the same time. I do not regret the career. I regret the years when career was the only language I knew for talking about my own worth. You are somewhere on this same road right now. Maybe near the beginning, maybe in the middle. I do not know exactly where, but I know one thing. The question I asked myself at Richard's funeral is better asked now, while there is still time to change the answer. What will people say about you? Not about your title, about you. If you are satisfied with that answer, good. If not, you still have time. Do not spend all of it chasing the next level. Spend at least some of it becoming the person people talk about with warmth, not with respect, with warmth. And if this story hit something real in you, subscribe. More voices like this one come out here, real ones, no gloss. One like helps these words reach the people who need them right now. Maybe they reached you in time.